What's going on, everybody? It's another week and another episode of Old School, New School. I'm your host for the week, Jude, Allume, here with my main man, Will Masisak. How's it going, Will?
It's going, man. It was like we were teased with summer, and now we're back to winter. I guess that's spring.
That's absolutely. It's like a winter day, dead middle of winter day right now. But one thing that does come with the spring, as well as the warm weather, is the NFL Draft quickly approaching. We're a couple weeks out, and we're going to get right back into the coverage. We took a little break for the free agency frenzy, but now we're back at it. Today, we're going to be discussing the top linebackers and tight ends in this year's draft. Let's start
So the linebacker discussion is going to be pretty long, and the tight end discussion is going to be pretty short.
There's a lot of good linebackers this year. I feel like this might be the best group of linebackers in a while. I think there's like a good 5 or 6 of them that you can just plug and play right away. Who's your favorite out of the bunch right now?
Well, before we get to my favorite, I just want to say something about linebackers. And the reason you mentioned seems to be a lot of them. You know how there's a lot of wide receivers right now as well?
Yeah.
These are both functions of the changing in the game. And I actually think that middle of the field defenders, so linebackers, slot defenders, and strong safeties, kind of flexible position-wise, that these are they're on their way to becoming more important or as important as edge rushers, because teams get rid of the ball really quickly and they try to attack these slants and the short patterns in the middle of the field and also run the ball on the edges. So you got to have somebody that can, counter that kind of quick offense and the quarterback option. And to me, that makes these coverage linebackers or linebackers that have some speed and athleticism. They're going to rise to the top in the college game, and we're going to see more and more of them in the draft, thankfully, because we need them in the NFL. The days of the dinosaur 250-pound linebacker who runs downhill and kills your run game is pretty much dead.
There's still a couple of them. There's still a couple of them out there. But I think those guys are just kind of adjusting their game, too, where they can still do that. But, they add that extra versatility that even they're this huge human being at 260 pounds, they can still go sideline to sideline and make plays for you.
Well, that brings us perfectly to who do I think is the best linebacker in the draft. So we're talking about, just so that everyone knows, off-ball linebackers. By that I mean a linebacker is not primarily a pass rusher on the edge. He's somebody that might pass rush, and he might be in coverage, and he might stop your run game or whatever. But he's mainly lined up off the ball. So in a 4-3 defense, got 3 of those guys. In a 3-4 defense, you have the 2 middle linebackers, 2 inside linebackers. So these kind of linebackers, to me, Zaven Collins is far and away the best linebacker in this draft.
Far and away.
It is. He's a really great athlete. He's a freak athlete, and he's a big guy, 260 pounds. But it's his instincts for the game. He may not be the best linebacker. He's the best football player who plays linebacker. That's how I would put it. He managed to be involved in pretty much everything that happens when you play Tulsa. So he's playing for a school that has some NFL talent. Every once in a while, they had a good defensive lineman last year. They got a couple things, but pretty much, you're just trying to avoid that guy. And I think anytime you can be that guy on the defense, whether a good team, small team, big team, that's pretty great. He's solid in coverage. Actually, made a lot of plays and interceptions, forced fumbles, sacked a quarterback. He's just a terror. Good instincts, good instincts, and big. And I just feel like he fits any scheme. To me, the top guys in any category should be transcendent of scheme. Whatever you're doing on defense, you can draft this guy, and he'll do it for you. How about you?
I feel like you might have looked at some of my notes for Zaven Collins, because a lot of what you said is exactly what I have written down here. Great instincts, high football IQ, playmaker. You look at his highlight tape, and I promise you're going to say, I want to see more of this guy, because he just stands out. Anytime it's a big play on defense for Tulsa, more than likely Zaven Collins is around that ball. And just like you were saying earlier, those 260-pound guys, those days are not there. He's listed at 6'4" and 260 pounds, but it's crazy because you watch him play and he looks like he might be a DB or something, a strong safety. I mean, with the number 23 on, you might confuse him for a safety, but he just moves so well. And if he's really a legit 6'4", 260, that's all the more impressive. If not, I don't really care, because sometimes you can just watch a player and say, that guy's got it. I need to see more of that guy. I want that guy on my team. He definitely fits in there, because middle linebacker is one of those things where it's like that's the quarterback of your defense. And he's there, and I'm watching him make the play over and over and over again. And you can just see he takes that quick 1 second, just boom, reads the play, and then he's there. There's no hesitation. He's downhill. He's taking on blocks and getting rid of them. And it's just everything you want to see in your linebacker, he's capable of doing. And that high football IQ definitely is something you want from your backer, and it's going to translate over to his NFL game. And I mean, just watching his tape, I was amazed, because it's like he didn't miss. It was just everything was like, you got it. This is a player you have to focus on and you have to scheme against. And I'd love to see if it translates to the NFL. He might be like the best linebacker in a couple of years, you know?
Yeah, and what last thing that I wanted to say was the versatility is amazing. You know, he could be your Levante David. He could also be your what's his name? The other linebacker there in Tampa Bay.
Devin White.
Yeah, so he could be your White. You know, if you could be the guy that's really focused on stopping the run game, or the guy that's focused on in coverage or blitzing. So I think he kind of pretty much has enough position flexibility that, like I said, you could use him outside, in the middle. He'd be great for any team.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I think Tulsa's pro day is today. I'd love to see was 40 times the number.
He ran into about 4.5.
4.5? I mean, that's if he's a legit 6'4", 260 running a 4.5, that is great. Like, I'm afraid if I'm a defender, man, that's a lot of weight coming at you in a short amount of time, man. All right, so maybe not a guy that's I mean, some people say he's the best linebacker. I don't know if I would throw him up there as the best, but he's certainly in that top 5 to say the least. I'd say Micah Parsons. I'm not gonna lie to you. His pro day definitely it boosted his stock to say the least. I mean, whenever you got a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", 240 plus pounds, and he runs a 4.3 40, I mean, this is wide receiver speed we're talking about from your linebacker. Like, that's a lot of versatility that's going to come with that speed. And it's not just the 40 time, like his vertical jump, his 3-cone time, his shuttle time, everything was just unbelievable. And when you got a player that big and who's that explosive, like, you can't help, if you're a defensive coordinator, but to salivate a little bit and thinking of all the things you can possibly do with him. And then you look at his tape at Penn State. Penn State, a school known for, producing some great linebackers, and he just might be the next one in that long line of linebackers. And it speaks for itself. Like, he made plays for that Nittany Lions defense. And, the pro day was kind of just the sugar on top. A lot of people do have him as the number one. I think he's absolutely belongs in that conversation.
Well, he's definitely the best athlete. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And, there's also the context. The context is, to me, is like every year, all these Penn State guys come out with amazing, performances at their pro day. And they're incredible athletes. And I just think to myself, I think they're all pretty good football players, but I really think the one I want to draft is the strength and conditioning coach, because their guys have for years now been kind of insane in what they do. You look at a guy like Jesse James, who just was a tight end for Pittsburgh and Detroit, and now unemployed, who had a pro day workout that was like the kind of workout that the best tight end would have. And not even really that great a player, but he tested like he was some kind of, superhuman athlete. So I do take these numbers from Micah Parsons and from Jason Owa. I take them a little bit with a grain of salt. Not that they aren't great athletes, but I'm not sure that there is this history of these amazing athletes always translating to being great NFL players. Right. And guys like a guy like Micah Parsons might hit the athletic part, hands down. He's amazing. So when he knows where he's going and he's on his way there, he gets there as well as anybody can get there. Like, that part of it is he can get through a block, he can get there with speed. It's the hesitation at the beginning for linebackers, I think, that makes some guys who aren't very fast really good linebackers that you just anticipate where the play is going to go, and they anticipate what they have to do to get there. The sort of play recognition and, path, they see it, it's slowed down for them. And so a guy like Micah Parsons, yes, I think he can get better at that in the NFL, but it would be one reason even though he's a superior athlete, why I would have him behind Zaven Collins. I have Parsons number 4, but I have him 4 because I have somebody at 3 that you probably won't be thinking of as a linebacker. But even top 3 is still, there's nothing to sneeze at in this really, really good class.
Right. Who do you have at 2?
At number 2, I have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. How'd I do?
Oh, same guy, yeah.
JOK. So
yeah.
So
I like him a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I had him 3rd. Makai had 2nd, and I had Jeremiah 3rd.
Yeah. So the thing is, JOK is more than just okay. He played somewhere around, I know it's clever, 250, he played about 205, 205 pounds, and he's about 6'1.5", something like that. So he played basically at the size of a safety, but he truly played linebacker. He played all over the middle of the defense. And in a way, he represents that thing I was talking about earlier, sort of this positionless defense. I think not only does it give a defensive coordinator a lot of options for what he can do, but he's a tool that worked effectively at all levels. He can rush the passer. He can drop run plays in the backfield. He can cover not just a running back out of the backfield or a tight end. He can cover a wide receiver down the field. He basically out jumped tight ends who will be first or second round picks in the NFL. Playing the ball in the air. So he's a really unique character, and I feel like in the NFL game, those kinds of guys are there's not that many of them, and they're really, really valuable. So that to me boosts him up to the number 2 slot. Plus, he came to his pro day at I think 212, and you look at him and he's ripped, but it still looks like he could carry 225 at least, maybe even more. And I think you play coverage linebacker at a healthy 225, you're still a rare bird in the NFL. Yeah. So I like him to be sort of that Derwin James, Troy Polamalu, like the guy you can move around on the defense and put him in different roles in each play. And he doesn't have his position doesn't need to have a name.
Right. Again, and another one where it's like I feel like you've been looking at my notes. When I see him, I'm thinking of the guy who came out of Clemson last year, Isaiah Simmons. Another guy who's they use him all over the field. Maybe Clemson did a little bit more because they had him literally lining up at corner, at safety, at linebacker, at slot corner. And JOK, Jeremiah, he didn't necessarily line up at safety, but he definitely lined up at linebacker. He lined up and played the slot corner. They moved him all around that defense as well. And he just made plays wherever they put him at. Like, he's good with the run. He's good in coverage. Like, there's no one thing that he does well. The only knock is that, he's undersized. And I think even in today's NFL, you don't need to be that guy that's huge. If you're, a tall guy who can move, who's got the speed, who's got the strength, because he still has the strength, even though he's not a huge guy, I think you still have the tools that you need to be successful. And then if you're a defensive guy, you're not really worried that he's undersized. You're just thinking and salivating a little bit, like, how many different ways can I use this guy? Like, I can put him in so many different packages and have him blitz and have him cover, and nobody's going to know what to expect from him on any given play. So that's going to be something I use to my advantage. So that definitely helps his stock because, you can put him in so many different places, and he's just an athlete that's explosive. Another guy where you look at his tape and you're just watching him in the backfield. You're watching him downfield, making plays on the ball. And it's like, man, ballers are going to ball, and he absolutely balled when given the opportunity, man.
You see, that to me is the kind of the thing that separates him and Zaven Collins from Micah Parsons. It's like the first two guys are ballers. They're just like on whatever team they go to and whatever system they play in, they're going to ball. And
they're going to
may or may not work out for either of them. It's the way it is with draft picks. But I feel more confident that they'll be successful. Micah Parsons is going to have to go to a place where he fits a little bit better and he's coached a little bit better and finds the role that really works for him because he's got the tools. So that's all. That would be why I have him down a little bit.
I think Micah fits more of that traditional linebacker role where he's not going to be the guy that you're saying, okay, I need you to cover the slot receiver.
That's right.
But leave him in that middle of the defense, or even as a Sam or Will linebacker. And, he's going to make the play. He's not a guy that's not going to make a play. He's not a guy that you're going to have to be worried about. It's just he doesn't have that versatility that these other two guys have.
I'm going to simplify his role for his own benefit. I'm going to say, you're the middle linebacker, and your responsibility is to find the running back, find the hole that the running back is looking for, and meet him in the hole. And if he goes out for a pass, or if he goes out for a pass, you cover him. If he stays in to block, you blitz. That's kind of like a fairly simple role for a young player, and maybe his role can expand over time. But I think he'd be great at that.
I mean, that's kind of the other knock on him too. Like he wasn't really great in coverage, playing man to man. So we'll see if that's something he's been working on, and if he gets better at the next level with that. How about less thinking, more playing for him? Yeah, I mean, whenever you're not thinking and you're just going off of instincts, you're definitely going to be doing better as a football player. Who's a guy that maybe isn't on the radar that you like?
Ah, boy. Well, I'll give you two quick ones. I would say that Garrett Wallow from TCU is a player that I think most people are not thinking he's even a day 2 pick. I think they're probably thinking he's a 4th round pick or something like that. But I think if you're looking for what certain other downhill linebackers in this draft, who we'll get to in a second, are supposed to be like that traditional middle linebacker who can go sideline to sideline, make a lot of tackles for you. But is not necessarily a real versatile piece, right? He's athletic and can play in coverage, but his game is really playing downhill. But Wallow made a lot of tackles, covers a lot of ground. He's in that same sort of mold as Cameron McGrone or Nick Bolton, who are maybe players that we'll touch on. But these are sort of the more traditional linebackers. But I like Garrett Wallow maybe a little more than the other two, a little bit more athletic. The fact that he played in a conference that with absolutely no defense should not be held against him again.
I hear you. I've got a different name for a guy that, maybe a lot of people aren't talking about, but I feel like he'll come. Some team will take him in day like 2 or 3, and they'll get a hell of a player out of him. At the very least, somebody that's going to contribute on special teams, and that's Derek Barnes out of Purdue. Mm-hmm. The knock on him, again, size. That seems to be a thing. So he's listed at 6 foot, 245 pounds. So obviously he's not as tall as they would like him to be, but who cares? Because you see him take on these linemen that are bigger, taller than him. And it's like he's playing around with kids. He's just taking them and tossing them like they're not even there. Yep. He lived in the backfield. Like, this man made a lot of tackles for loss. Great against the run. Another thing, I guess you can call it a knock against him. You want to see a little bit more from him in man-to-man coverage and pass coverage. But as far as like just being that standard middle linebacker, a load who's not going to let the running back get past him, he absolutely fits the bill. And for his size, he moves great as well. I'm not saying he's terrible in that passing game, because he can definitely keep up with those running backs and those tight ends. It's just a matter of, him needing to recognize the routes that they're running and being able to stay with them and, make a play on the ball at that point of contact. Aside from that, this guy's explosive. He makes some big hits. He gets a lot of sacks for you. So at another dimension to his game, he's able to get to the quarterback from that interior linebacker role. So I feel like his game will translate well, or at the very least, he'll be a guy that some team can work on, and in a couple of years, you'll definitely be hearing his name.
Yeah, that's a good sleeper. I mean, somebody who plays like a dog and is good on special teams. Every team needs linebackers like that. It doesn't matter. Just nasty guy. Even if you drafted a linebacker in the first round, that's still a guy you're going to look at because he can make your team better. Just quickly before we move on from linebackers, too polarizing, I find, off-ball linebackers. Some people think they're, top 2 or 3 linebackers in the draft, and other people think that they're not draftable. And that would be Chaz Surratt from North Carolina, and the other would be Baron Browning from Ohio State. Okay. I think I'll just start with Browning. To me, Browning, I feel like, is another one that has all the tools and is just so new to the position. He used, he was a safety, I think a running back or something in high school. So it's just new to him, and he has that same thing where there's a pause, and then he thinks, this is what I have to do, and he goes to do it, and it looks great if he gets there. And Surratt is more of a physical limitations guy, does everything right, in this part of the game, but in the mental part of the game, but not necessarily has the physical tools to get everywhere. Made a lot of plays, though. What's your take on those two guys?
Surratt, for sure, I thought was an interesting guy just because he didn't start off as a linebacker. He started off as a quarterback and, was actually playing quarterback before he made that switch over. But that's kind of something that you can twist and make like an advantage because, he's really new and really raw to the position. So there's so much untapped potential that you can have with Surratt. So I don't really knock him, but I feel like that's someone you can look at and say, hey, this is not the best he's going to be, but he's already pretty good right now. I'll take a chance on him and, coach him up as much as I want to coach him up and see what becomes of him.
No, it's also, but the thing is, he's a raw prospect, but a little bit of an older prospect, which is usually like a little bit of a bad deal because if you're 20, they can teach you everything by the time you're 23. If you're 24, then, you're 26 or 27, you're halfway out of the league, So we'll see. I mean, some team, like you said, some team will say, good enough, what he can do right now, we'll use him.
Yeah. Just stick him in there and tell him blitz, go get the quarterback, and he'll make something happen from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Browning was a position switch guy as well. He started off as a running back and then safety, I think, and then the linebacker just recently. So another guy where you got the tools and you played, he's obviously the elite athlete playing at a big school, big recruit. So yeah, I think, my meter is up on both of them, but they're a little bit more boom bust kind of players.
Once you get to those later rounds, that's all it is anyways, right? Boom or bust.
True.
Let's switch it over to tight end. My take, I feel like there's one tight end who's a cut above everybody else, and then
Tony
it's a bunch of
from
guys.
Virginia. No, I'm just kidding.
No, sir. I'd like to hear more about it, but no, sir. I think it was a joke. Kyle Pitts, Kyle Pitts for sure. It's kind of like the NFL. You have that tier of guys that's just way better than everybody else. Like this past season. It was a ridiculous stat I saw where the second most receiving yards was who's the guy from Oakland again?
Tight end Darren Waller.
Darren Waller, yeah, he had like 1,000 something, and it was like 400 plus more yards than the next guy up, which is just goes to show you like it's really tiers. Like there's 2 or 3 guys that are really good, and then it's just guys that are serviceable. And I feel like that's Kyle Pitts. He's like the best in this class, hands down. I'm not going to say he's great at everything at all because his blocking definitely needs some work. But what I will say about his blocking is year over year, it's gotten better and better. And he's still only 20 years old. So give him some more time, and put the work in. You can only expect that it's going to continue to get better. And in addition to that, it's not like something he doesn't want to do. Like he's willing and he's trying and he's working on making that weakness a strength in his game. But we also have what he can do as a receiver. And that's really what a lot of scouts are interested in and like salivating and anxious to get their hands on, because you watch him catch the ball, you might as well be watching a receiver. Like his body control, his route running, his hands are all unbelievable, and they just add to his whole game. Like he doesn't need to be an inline tight end. They're definitely going to have him lined up in slot. I've even seen it where Florida was using him lined up as, a sole receiver out there on an island by himself against cornerbacks, and he's making plays on them, not even just going up on a jump ball, but literally running routes and beating the corner at the point of the cut. So I think that's a great prospect. A lot of people are putting him in that category of, Travis Kelce and the George Kittles. That remains to be seen, because tight end is definitely one of those positions that kind of takes a long time before, you find yourself in that elite company. But I'm excited for the potential on Pitts.
I mean, I think he's either the best or the top 2 prospect in the class. That's how good he is, right? And just to start with blocking, since it's not his strongest suit, to me, the biggest thing about blocking is the willingness. And as you said, he has the willingness to do it. In fact, he said that he stayed in school this extra year. He could have come out last year and been a top pick. He stayed in school this year primarily so that he could work on his blocking. So he spent the summer before last season working on his blocking, and it was notably better last year. But the thing is, when you're, typically if you're a tight end, it's better that you can do both things, that you're equal threat to be a blocker and a receiver. But when you're as good a receiver as Kyle Pitts, it kind of doesn't matter that much because you can put Kyle Pitts out by the sideline and he takes at least one guy and maybe 2 guys out with him that he would have had to block if they were in the box. So that can work for you too. But he's just another, like, he was such a good receiver that teams knew they were throwing it to him, and especially near the goal line, and they could have even told him to play ahead of time, and they could not stop it. That's how good he is, using his body and catching the ball. So yeah, we have no argument. I mean, I just think he's a transcendent player, and the only question will be, can he live up to the expectations in his NFL career? Because even when you're a great player, you have to have things go right for you in your career. But it sure feels like he is as close to a can't miss prospect in this class as there is.
Definitely. So if he's in your top 2, who else is in that top 2?
Okay, so wait. So if he's here, actually, if Kyle Pitts is way up there,
right.
Number 2 is like here.
Okay.
So, I mean, to say he's number 2, it's like it's a long way down to number 2 for me. But I think that next group, there isn't a clear-cut number 2. That's how I would put it. I think it depends on what style you want. If you want an H-back, maybe it's Brevin Jordan from Miami. He's a little undersized and is a good receiver and a willing blocker, if not a very good blocker. You could even have a guy like Trey McKitty, who's has barely any receptions in his career, but he's a very good blocker and showed out at the Senior Bowl. The guy I think most people have at number 2 is Pat Freiermuth from Penn State, who's a traditional type tight end. But my problem with him is, yes, he's a two-way tight end. He blocks and he catches, but I don't think he's particularly good at either. So to me, it's I don't know if I'd necessarily have him there.
Not good at either.
Yeah, well, okay. Let me give you my rundown, because I'm sure he's probably your number 2. He's everyone's number 2. My rundown is simple.
Yeah.
He has no burst up the seam. He can be carried by a linebacker, routinely covered up the seam by a linebacker comfortably, even against teams that didn't have great coverage linebackers. So to me, that's not that he isn't fast, but it's that 10 to 20 yard burst off the line of scrimmage that's an issue for tight ends. That, to me, I'd rather have a guy that runs 4.9, but he runs that 15 yards as fast as anybody. He has the get off, because I think you can get that guy open, and if he has some length, it's like Freiermuth does, it worked great. But in his case, I think that's an issue for him. And then secondly, the blocking, it's like he's a big dude, but the results are not super impressive. I think he considers himself a blocker and takes some pride in it, but he doesn't have the kind of blocking force that, for instance, like I think about number 2 tight ends in the NFL who are really good blockers, like Darren Fells for 10 years. Darren Fells was a basketball player who didn't even really play high school football, and he's a better blocker than anybody in this class. So that's my thing is, I think we're overinflating Pat Freiermuth a little bit because he's a traditional tight end.
I'm going to disagree with you on his blocking. I think where he lacks what Pitts lacks as a receiver, he outshines Pitts as a blocker. And the thing with him, like, even when he is receiving the ball, it seems like he kind of looks for contact and initiates, creates it, and absorbs it and thrives in it. Like, he breaks tackles when he is a receiver. But as a blocker, like, he's absolutely looking to be the one that's making the hit as opposed to taking the hit. And you just got to love that, because he's there doing the nasty work and, like, looking to do the nasty work, looking to give that devastating shot. And then if he gets to the second level and you're that DB that's in front of him, like, you might as well just take yourself off the play, because once he's got his hands on you as a defensive back, he's not letting you go. And more than likely, he's going to put you on your butt. And I think he's just a great blocker. He's a above average receiver. Not to say like anything is wrong, but just like you said, he doesn't really do anything great in that receiving department. Yeah. He's not going to give you great bursts. He's not going to give you a lot of separation. He has good, reliable hands, not great hands. And I mean, like, I haven't seen too many, and I don't think there was much there where, if you put the ball up in the air, if you're putting it up in the air for a tight end, you want majority of the time your tight end is going to come down with the ball. I don't think he has that in his game as of yet. But as a traditional tight end who's going to go out there and block, and you can depend that he's going to block well for you, and he's going to run his route, absolutely, and make the catch if the ball is delivered there, I like him as that number 2 prospect in this tight end pool.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's a terrible blocker. I think he is the 4th best blocker in the class. So that's not terrible. Yeah, that's not terrible, because the other 3 guys aren't necessarily overall as good a player as him, or, they're not clearly better than him, but they're good blockers. So it isn't that it's terrible. It's just I just feel that it's overinflated. Like I think maybe sometimes the tendency is to want to pull down a player a little bit whose rating seems just too high, and that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's the fact that there's so few tight ends who can really step in and play in this class, who are traditional inline tight ends, that just being competent at it would get you to the top of the pile. So that's sort of how I feel. I mean, to that end, Hunter Long. Like to me, Hunter Long of Boston College is another inline type tight end. He had pretty much 2 seasons where he did nothing but block and was a really dedicated blocker, never complained, about that job. Mm-hmm. And then this past season, they started throwing him the ball like he was their main receiver. I think there's probably some potential for that guy to get better in the NFL. He's not as he's not as big as Freiermuth. He's not as athletic even, but he's another of that type. What'd you make of him?
He was a guy that I thought, could be another project type of tight end. He definitely has the size for it. He can start, but my notes right here on him is like does a lot of things well, but doesn't do anything great. Like he can block well, he can catch well, but he's not a guy that you're looking to be like a playmaker for you as a receiver. And I'm not as comfortable as some of the other guys, I would say, as like just leaving him one-on-one with one of these NFL DNs and believing that he can take care of that block all on his own. That being said, like, again, he's a guy that you can work on, and, he can start in the NFL, but it'll be something that takes time. And if he puts in the hours, in the weight room, maybe adds a little bit more size to his frame. He's already got the height for it. His hands are reliable, but it's just nothing is great. This is more of a guy that I want to see grow and build and develop over time. But he's definitely in the upper echelon of tight ends. But again, for me, it's like those top 2 or 3 guys, and then it's just kind of like a steep fall off of the cliff.
Sure. Well, who would you? I guess I'll ask the question this way. I just feel like there's a pile, underneath Pitts. Aside from the guys that we've talked about, anybody from that pile we haven't mentioned that you think is like a guy that you would maybe even prefer out of this pile?
I really don't. For me, it's really just the top two, and even with the top 2, there's discrepancy there between Pitts and Freiermuth. Even the guy from Miami, I'm not Brevin Jordan. I'm not too fond of just from a production. I didn't see a lot of production from him in Miami. And again, he's not even a traditional tight end to me. Nope. As far as like him being undersized, and he won't be a guy that's going to be in line at the tight end position. They'll probably have him flexed out, have him as an H back and things like that. It's just a matter of if you can be creative in using him, then he might end up adding another dimension to your offense. I have another tight end, again, not in that group, not in that first or even second group, but I just like him for the tenacity he has as a blocker, and that's Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame. He's another guy, his production as far as like receptions didn't really do anything for me, but if I'm looking at his tape, I'm just watching him like take on these blocks, and he just looks like he's angry when he's running into other football players, and he just does it full speed. And I didn't see him miss a lot. It was just over and over him just smashing. Like they literally have the name for it, smash mouth football. Yep. He's going to come out and punch you as many times, as hard as he can. And he's just going to keep doing it. And if you're the opposite guy, like you've got to come and really lace up your cleats, really have everything buckled down tight, because he's going to test you on every play.
Okay, so I hear that, and if I didn't know anything about him and you said that to me, I'd be like, wow, yeah, I'm super into this guy. He sounds like like a great tight end. There's 2 things. One is he's fairly undersized. He's basically somewhere between fullback and H back. That's really what his role was at Notre Dame. So he's never going to be like this inline tight end, but very good at the blocking and stuff that he did. But the bigger issue is 4 drops in 20 targets. So the problem is, okay, yes, you're mostly blocking, and so when they finally throw it to you, you're beat up, and you don't even. It's like, oh my god, the ball's coming. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that. And if you increased his volume, he would be better than that sounds. But I just feel like if you're going to be an H-back, if you're not an inline tight end, then you had better be bringing it a little bit offensively once in a while, or else they can't afford to have you on the field. They'd rather have a wide receiver.
One dimensional.
Yeah. So, but I do like him. I think you can see the promise, and I do believe he'll have a career in the NFL for a long time because even if he's challenged offensively in the NFL, he's a blocker and he'll make his bones on that. I can see that working for a long time.
There's always jobs in the NFL for guys that do the nasty work, and he definitely does the nasty work.
All right. I got two guys. They both, they clearly both have knocks, so they come with disclaimers. But I think the best overall tight end, not named Kyle Pitts in this class, is from played at BYU. His name is Matt Bushman. He's a little bit off the radar because he tore his Achilles about a week before the season started last year. In 2019, he was the main target basically for BYU and Zach Wilson, and it was expected he was going to come into his senior season and Zach Wilson was going to throw the ball all over the yard, and that he was going to have another big season, and that would propel him into a little bit more draft profile. But he tore his Achilles, and the other knock is that he's not all of the BYU kids go on a mission and are overaged, but he is in fact overaged. He's already 24, I think, on his way to 25. So if you want to hold that against him to be like a top couple of rounds kind of pick, but man, when it gets to day 3, he's a 247, 8-pound, 6'4" dude who is amazing with the ball in the air and is a pretty decent blocker. And I think he's you look at his tape from 2019. There's a game against Utah. If you get a chance to see that, it's on YouTube. There's a guy, you watch him and you just think that's the best tight end I've seen this year. But if you have to get that guy healthy, can he be fully healthy? His pro day a couple days ago, he actually, even still recovering from Achilles, he's not 100% and still ran basically had the best workout of any tight end not named Kyle Pitts. So pretty good.
Pitts had a freakish workout anyways. Yeah.
But the other guys, do you know Zach Davidson from Central Missouri? That's the guy.
You're going deep into the tight end pool.
But here's the thing. He's some small schoolers are like they're off the radar totally to the point where nobody's ever talking about them. But this guy's, people have been talking about him for at least a year now. Here's a great story. He was the punter at Central Missouri. He was actually in his high school. He played basketball, and the coach, they were looking for somebody to punt. And they found out that, he said he could punt. He never really knew how to punt. He taught himself how to punt. On his third trying out for the high school team, he kicked the ball 50 yards, and they were like, you got the job. So he got a scholarship as a punter, and he went to Central Missouri, but he's 6'7", 245. And at some point they were like, we think we have to get you doing something more than punting because you got size. Maybe we can try out. And
so many times you hear that story the other way around. Yeah,
that's right. So anyway, he had a couple of gigantic years. Obviously, very very small school, but check out this workout. He ran the 40 in 4.64. He vertical jumped 37.5 inches. This is a punter tight end. Okay, he was still like the top punter in Division II. Broad jump 9.9. 40-yard shuttle, 4.26 for a tight end, which is like, that's in, Aaron Hernandez territory, which is one of the best ever for a tight end. 3-cone drill, 6.95. This kid's an athlete. And you watch him play the game. They're not lining him up always as an inline tight end and just block people with his size. They just, at that level, he's a mismatch. They throw it to him, but he attacks the ball in the air. He's got good speed. It's just the level of competition you could never, ever know for sure. But if you want a guy that has size and has the potential to be an inline tight end who is actually a really good athlete, then I feel like he's a guy you might be interested in.
You said 6'7", 240?
245.
Freakish numbers for a guy that big. Any last thoughts for you?
No, I just feel like it's really, I think I was saying to you before we started rolling, it's a really great draft year. It feels like there's a lot of prospects late in the draft. And so pardon me if I drone on and on about a guy from Central Missouri who's a punter tight end. But anyway, it's the best season of the year, draft season for me. Last words for you.
Just want to kind of, it's kind of a feel-good story. Justin Hillard This guy was one of the top recruits in the 2015 recruiting class in Ohio State, playing linebacker, going back to linebackers. And, the injury bug just hit him, and he got that super rare 6-year eligibility for Ohio State. The thing about him is literally just the injuries, but every time he stepped on the field, he was probably the best linebacker out there for Ohio State. And now we got to see him this past college football playoff and what he can do. And he just made play after play after play after play in the games that mattered most, which is definitely what you want to see out of any player. And now he finally gets his chance to kind of come full circle, get past all those injuries, and he'll probably be one of the first linebackers drafted in this year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a kid you can root for.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, Jude, time to wrap it up for this week's edition. Hit the like button, subscribe, please. It helps us out. It helps other people find the show. We are Old School New School Football. That's OSNSFB on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Find us because we want to find you. And Jude, great talking football with you as always.
Always. Found it.
Fist pound.